Welcome, welcome, welcome. Clubhouse. I know so many of y'all are new to this, but I am the People's Oracle, the Sidereal astrologer. If you have heard the word sidereal, if you have, gotten curious about your sidereal birth chart, it is because of me. Now, did I invent the sidereal zodiac? I did not, but I have invented, divine, tarried for, waited for the revelation of how to use the sidereal zodiac outside of the Vedic framework, outside of a tropical framework. You can't just take tropical interpretations and apply them to your sidereal birth chart. Ask me how I know. It doesn't work that way. And so I had to wait and wait and wait and keep my face, in these charts to figure out how this works. And moment by moment, I'm getting these revelations, which y'all can't see this on Clubhouse, but on Instagram and YouTube, you all can see this 2020 Sidereal Astrology Guide. So I wanted to start today. I don't think I'm going to be able to do because it's just too many people on these platforms. Catch me sometime during the week on either Instagram or on Clubhouse offering some tarot or astrology readings. So I wanted to pull up the month of November here to see what I had written for this eclipse. Now, all of this content in this guide was written sometime in 2019, right? So it's really fascinating to see how some of these things play out. Let me see if I mentioned anything in the monthly summary here. Dang, how did I not write anything about the eclipses here? I guess because this was so much going on this month. Okay, so in the back of the 2020 Sidereal Astrology Guide, I have these fill in the blanks. And each fill in the blank lists by date an event that is inside the calendar portion of this guide for each month. And so I list what the astro event it is, and I offer just a small kind of snippet of what this event means, and then you're instructed to fill in the blank with the house topics relevant to your sidereal birth chart, which you should have filled out. All of that. I offer instructions on where to get your sidereal birth chart, how to read the symbols, and you fill out the table as reference for the year. So we have November 30th, 2020, which is tomorrow, here in Central Time Zone. Full moon, lunar eclipse in Taurus, realizing the limits of conforming. What is conforming? This is the purview of Taurus. Taurus is a sign ruled by Venus, and all Venus signs are about what things appear to be. What is the form? What is the shape? What does it look like it is? So when we're talking about decolonizing the survival instinct, which is the theme that I have set for this series of eclipses, which began kind of with a loud bang back in the spring during the George Floyd insurrection and rebellion. Decolonizing the survival instinct is all about the ways we are realizing how the identities of race, gender, class, and sexuality, how we conform to those as a means to survival, but also how we dissent, how we realize the limits of conforming to our assigned race, to our assigned gender, to our assigned class, to our assigned sexual identity. One thing that we're learning is that you cannot tell who and what somebody is based on what they look like. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, right? What we are assigned, the identities that are projected onto us, may or may not have anything to do with who we actually are. What our genitals look like, what our skin color look like, how we speak, what our class appears to be, may say something or nothing about who and what we actually are. But in this moment, as we've learned during the George Floyd Rebellion, which began with a full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio of all signs, we learned that we cannot always conform our emotional experiences in order to keep other people comfortable. Now, there's a limit here. There are times when our rage is dangerous to us, where the expression of our rage leads us further into harm's way. And then there are times when we absolutely must express our rage in order to save our lives. And the moment of the George Floyd Rebellion, which began this new series of eclipses, Decolonizing the Survival Instinct, said, hey, no longer am I going to suppress my rage in order to make you my oppressor emotionally. If it cost me my life, if it cost me my job, if it cost me my peace, I am no longer going to suppress my rage, because the suppression of my rage has led you to believe that I am comfortable with your violence, that I accept your violence, that I accept this power dynamic of man, of white, of cis heteronormativity as right, as norm, as somehow deserving of power. Absolutely not. No longer will I silence my rage. Back then, back in June, I did a reading for that full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio, and I entitled it Not Peace, but a Sword, right? In the spiritual community, in the community of healers and diviners, oracle readers, priestesses, whatever, witches, and all of these things, there is this idea that spirituality equates to peace and love, that a truly spiritual person has no longing for material affluence, has no desire to engage in conflict, when in fact, there is a time and a season for all things. There's a time for war. There's a time for fighting. There's a time for sharpening your weapons and garnishing them ready for your enemy. There is a time for that. And we learned during the George Floyd Rebellion that this is a time for war. This is a time where if I lie down in a bed craving peace, it might just be my last sleep. So if I'm going to go out, right, I'm going to go out fighting. I'm going to go speaking up. I'm going to go out in the face of your tear gas, in the face of your rubber bullets, in the face of your intimidation, in the face of your Blue Lives Matter flags, in the face of your reverse racism, in the face of insert whatever oppression that we have encountered in this society. And so here comes the next chapter, realizing the limits of conforming. Now, this gets a little bit complicated. I talk about Scorpio as the survival instinct, but all fixed signs are about identity and who must I be to survive. Scorpio talks about our physical, physiological, biological reality. Remember that a feeling is physical first. It's what we feel in our body. It's something that our nervous system is doing in response to what it encounters. And if it encounters a threat, it might clench its fists. The heart might beat fast. I might avoid eye contact. All of these things happen in our physical body. But what we actually express, this has to do with a complex web of social rules and expectations based on what? Based on race, based on gender, based on class. Who is allowed to express rage and anger? White women. What price do they pay? What do they lose? What do white women sacrifice for expressing their? What do straight white men lose when they express their? But a trans person, queer person, a black woman expressing race, jobs, dignity, respect out. But at this moment, we are examining and realizing the limits of. In addition to this, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. We are still every single day confronted with the reality of our mortality. If we look around, we see people going on business as usual, ask parties, celebrations, gathering together. Will you conform? Sometimes being different means saving your life. The wound of Scorpio, where the sun and Mercury will be at this eclipse, the wound of Scorpio, Sidereal Scorpio, is too different to hide. All my Sidereal Scorpio rising folks know. What is it about you that is so different? There is nothing you can do to hide your difference. Is it your name? Is it your skin color? Is it your height? Is it your voice, your weight? In what ways does your appearance, your identity deviate from the expected norm? All of us are facing this moment together in many different ways. Will you be the one to wear a mask? Will you be the one not to wear a mask? Will you be the one to join in the fun? Or will you be the one to preserve your own life? This is a complex moment because Scorpio talks to us where the sun is. Scorpio talks to us about threats. Scorpio talks to us about what is this? Is this safe or is this dangerous? Will I live or will I die? Will this harm me or will I be safe? Those are the only two categories for Scorpio. And this moment has revealed something very, very, very interesting to me, that some people don't know how to save their own life. Why? Because they have been the norm. Embedded in this is this thing about othering, right? Othering. Who is the other? Who is the norm? What is the norm? For those who have never experienced being the other, they might have no clue about how to navigate complex structures of power and authority. They may not know that their tantrum is not welcome here because COVID doesn't care about your tantrum. So as we move through this season of eclipses, this is the first of two this season. The next one will be in Scorpio. And that one's going to be a heavy hitter, ladies. And dental men's and dental days, all of y'all. This is going to be a heavy hitter. We're so used to Sagittarius. We've had planets in Sagittarius almost nonstop since January 2017. And since that time, we've been radicalized politically. On all ends of the spectrum, we've been radicalized. We've awakened and said, I cannot lie down any longer in this world that refuses to bend to my entitlement to have it look like me, to be a manifestation of my intentions and convictions. But Sagittarius is gone, people. So either you woke up and you realize that in order for this world to look like your intentions and convictions, you got to stand up and say something. You got to speak. So either you missed that moment or you took advantage of it. You understand what I'm saying? And so now that we're beyond this moment, the election has happened. I said at one point, speaking about the Mercury retrograde in Libra, which I call principles of power. At one point, I talked about that there are some changes that only come via consensus, and that the force of your will is no match for reality. Only a consensual agreement to change the way that we perceive things, in this case, who deserves power, is going to implement change. And so Libra's about to be gone, people. The time for consensus is over. The time to change and save your own life is upon us. Whether it is race, gender, class, sexual identity, and COVID has highlighted for us the disparities in medicine, the disparities in this economic structure of racial capitalism rooted in patriarchy and white domination, white desires for power, unrelenting, has taught us that even death And even in death, our race, our gender, our class, our sexual identity, and the power dynamics and access to what we need to survive comes through. Thank you all so much on Instagram for your lovely, lovely, lovely client comments. Um, but we're gonna keep going. I don't have time to wait. So yes, uh, what are the limits of conforming in your life? And these definitions of conforming, right? Once we get, excuse me, to the spring side of these eclipses, and we're back to planets transiting through Aquarius, the self determination and self definition parts of this eclipse story re emerge and resurface for us to deal with. This is what we faced and had the opportunity to deal with at the George Floyd Rebellion, which again was where this eclipse series, Decolonizing, the survival instinct, eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio sidereally began. And we redefined Blackness as not suppressing and repressing rage, but matching our expression, our energy to the rage that we feel inside, to the anger, the sadness. No more repression, but there's no Aquarius right now. So that means that we may feel a lack of agency, a lack of ability to self define in this moment. This is not the moment for self definition, for challenging definitions of Blackness. Sometimes we must face the reality of things exactly as they are. This is that moment, exactly as they are at this moment. If you are Black, you have a higher probability of catching COVID, dying of COVID, not receiving treatment. Doesn't matter. There's nothing in Sagittarius right now. You can ask why all day. And if you're in the safety of your home, then you have the freedom to do so. But if you are a frontline worker, must be interfacing with people, you don't have the privilege to ask why right now. You put on your mask, say your prayers, and do what you have to do, because if you don't show up, who's going to pay rent? Who's going to feed yourself, your children, your family, right? There's a time for asking why. And we'll have those moments again, but this is the time to save your life. This is the time to protect yourself, to hunker down. We know what's coming. You don't need astrology to tell you. You don't need astrology to tell you what's coming. But if you're looking for me to tell you something different than what reality is, you're not going to find here. I don't have a message of love and light. I have a message of shore up your survival pod. I have a message of protect yourself and save your own life at all costs. Those of you with sidereal Taurus, you all are challenged the most, because making other people comfortable has been your survival mechanism that has worked really, really well. Sidereal Taurus, you have had to change what you look like. You've had to change things about your appearance, your expression, in order to be accepted, in order to survive, learn a new language, learn a new style of dress, learn new social codes, new ways to greet, new ways to speak. Do you make eye contact or avoid? Do you bow? Do you kiss? Shake hands? Do you hug? Do you step back, step forward? You understand what I'm saying? You've had to be so keyed into the emotional responses that your appearance and your behavior have elicited from other people, that actually listening to your own body's cry, your own body's voice of what you really feel, of whether you really feel safe or dangerous. Sidereal Taurus, you've learned that rejection, that other people's discontent is a danger to your life, body, and well-being. You are absolutely right. Whose emotional reality did you have to be plugged into? Did you have to police in order for yourself to be safe? Whose emotional reality was dangerous to you? and that you didn't have the freedom to be authentic in your own emotions. This is how Black people and women and other oppressed people, trans people and queer folk have had to live their whole lives. Our whole lives have been lived not in freedom of emotional expression, but learning how to elicit a specific response from other people. We've had to conform our emotional reality to somebody else's in order to survive. But this moment says, wake up, right? Let's see what these cards say. If you, just as a side note, two things. If you are totally mind blown right now and have no idea how I came up with this, if you are totally new to this and you have never heard astrology spoken about in this way, welcome to Divination for Liberation, where liberation is the function, not the feature of my astrology. We don't come in and paste the extra layer of woke talk. No, this is about the liberation of all oppressed peoples in the tradition of my ancestors who were kidnapped and they were enslaved and they were disenfranchised and oppressed from power structures, economic structures, social structures. They had no agency. Their agency was in the spiritual realm. Their agency was in hoodoo, in syncretizing into Christianity and Catholicism and Islam and Judaism and all of these other religions, the gods that they had outlawed, the gods that they brought over with them. And through these spiritual practices, they have gained agency through the use of oracles and bones and tea leaves and cards and all kinds of omens and auguries, right? They gained agency. They reclaimed the power that was stripped from them. So when I pick up these cards, when I look at a chart, this is about reclaiming agency. This is about liberation. This is about you and me and the freedom we seek and the power that we can have access to through our spiritual practices, through oracles, through the oils and the herbs and the baths and the prayers. Understand what I'm saying? So let's see what these cards have to say. If you are curious about your sidereal birth chart, you can visit thepeoplesoracle.com and click Sidereal Birth Chart, and this will offer instructions for you to cast your sidereal birth chart. How do you read the sidereal birth chart? You don't go to Google and search sidereal signs. You go back to thepeoplesoracle.com and click Shop, and you download Reading Your Sidereal Birth Chart Workshop, which is a 2-hour lecture, a workbook, and slides from a workshop I facilitated back at the end of September. It'll teach you what a planet is, what a sign is, what a house is in sidereal. We don't do tropical nothing over here. Anything in the hands of a white supremacist society turns into a tool of oppression, including astrology. That's news to some of you. I know it's radical to some of you. Somebody on Instagram asked me, is Vedic correct? I am not Hindu. I am not Indian. I do not speak Hindi. I do not speak Sanskrit. I am a Black woman in America, right? So the astrology I use needs to be a reflection of that. I'm not going to go to somebody else's culture and kind of claim it as my own and don't tell my story. They don't speak for me, right? I want my astrology to speak my Blackness. I want it to speak my worldview, that I am an individual that has emerged from community. And that community is found in my birth chart. Everything from the political to the economic and spiritual moment that I was born into is in my birth chart. The relationships, the community is all in my birth chart. This is no individualism. We're throwing that cultish crap away. We're not here for that. All right. So anyways, let me shuffle these cards. Let me see what we got. I'm going to take questions at the end. So I turned off hand raising on Clubhouse. And I appreciate so many of you all who have tuned in today on Instagram, on YouTube, on Clubhouse. I appreciate you all so much. Let's see what these cards have to say. Let us see. Let us see. Oh, people are asking about the 2021 guide. Yes, it's coming, but it's coming at a pandemic pace. All right, people? I am trying to chip away at this thing, and Mars has been so slow that I haven't really had the energy based on what it was doing to my chart. But Mars is moving now. Y'all see I got a video. I ain't done a video in months. So I'm back on video. I'm back on YouTube. And hopefully, now that I've got a break from readings, I'll be able to really dig into it. Two things coming up. One is 2021 talk, right? The will to live. That's one of my big themes for 2021. This will be occurring the weekend after Christmas, whenever that is. There will be a small fee for attending, and you will be able to ask questions. And I will be offering something for every single sign. So look out for that on my Instagram, on my Twitter. And yeah, yeah. The 2020 guide is still available. And those who have it already know, I don't need to tell y'all. I don't care that it's November 29th, 2020. That guide is still valuable. It's going to stay up in my store indefinitely because it's evergreen content. Um, so even once you get the 2021 guide, you missed out 2020, right? All of the people who went through the 2020 guide have a year's worth of content to reflect on and kind of go back to once you get the 2021 guide, because I'm always referencing time. And the thing about these guides, people, if you don't have it, no previous or prerequisite astrological knowledge is required. It's best that you empty your mind and show up like you don't know anything. Everything you need is in that guide. Okay? All right. So let's see here. Let's see what we've got here. We've got the Ten of Wands on the bottom of the deck. The card on the bottom of the deck is kind of our context. It's the reference point for how I'm going to read the rest of the cards. The Ten of Wands is about being fed up, it's about being tired, about being burnt out, having taken on so much. And this is relevant in so many contexts. The word that's coming to me is and weary feels like a word that my elders and ancestors would use, right? Weary and heavy laden, burdened, right? Those are some words that my ancestors would sing in hymns to talk about how tired they are of fighting, how tired they are of resistance, how hard it is just to survive, how hyper vigilant we must be, how we just can't rest and take a moment to sit and relax, right? Because we must be on guard for the enemy at all times, right? That we must always be on watch. There's not a moment that we can sit down and actually feel safe, especially in this moment when we are being hit with threats from all sides. Sometimes you just got to sit down and you just got to lay down. Sometimes there's no more fight left. Sometimes you gotta, as there's a story of, who is it, King Herod heard that this king was coming, and he like, oh hell no, ain't nobody about to come and take my power. Like, I'm big boss, because you know how power doesn't ever want to concede, even when it's an immoral and violent, right? And so he said, hey yo, this is what we about to do. We about to go to every single house and we gonna kill every single baby boy, right? Every single baby boy. What do you do when a threat like that is coming? What do you do when the king has proclaimed, amen, sorry, you just a casualty of my own ego, my own narcissism. You got to die. Give me your firstborn son. Firstborn sons are like in patriarchy, firstborn sons are like gold, right? It guarantees your name will be passed on. You have somebody to inherit the land. And so a prophecy came, is like, hey, yo, this is about to happen. But what you want to do is take this young lamb blood and just put a swipe over your door. You see, our ancestors were engaging in ritual and magic and witchcraft from the beginning, right? So you take that blood and you put it over your door, and this is going to pass you over. Sorry if I'm mixing up these Bible stories, but y'all get my drift, right? That in a moment like that, right, there is no marching in the streets to protest. There is no external resistance of fighting and yelling and burning things down, because that is not going to stop Herod from coming and murdering your firstborn child, right? This Ten of Wands is the weariness of oppression and threats coming from all sides. You just burn out and there's nothing you can do. What do you do when there is absolutely nothing you can do? What do you do? Just gotta go lay low. You gotta lay low, you have to hide. This is so relevant to this moment. There are some of us who have thrived and who have um, done well in this moment. But there are so much many who are houseless, have no income, families. The food lines have been long. Weary. We are weary. We are weary and heavy laden. Let's see what else we got. And again, for my clubhouse folks, I am a descendant of a long line of Baptist preachers raised by Pentecostal doctrine, uh, family, legacy. So it's always in me. Always in me. Let's see. We've got the Three of Pentacles here. We've got the Three of Wands. Ooh, interesting. Winter. Interesting. And we have the Hangman. I'm going to oil this seat. I got to find out where the joint is. Got this seat so squeaky. And we've got the Hanged Man. Oh, man. Whew. All right, Spirit. So, threes. We've got two of them. The Three of Pentacles. There we go. There we go. Three of Wands. Three of Pentacles. This card really makes me think of a phrase that I've been speaking so frequently, your survival pod, right? Three of Pentacles is about this resourcefulness. I was reading this article. I shared it on my Twitter earlier, and it was talking about like boundaries and humans or mammals like fight or flight, and they came up with this phrase called your peripersonal space, and how the peripersonal space extends beyond your physical skin, and how in our brains, like the whole mechanism of discerning, or defining whether something is near or far, in terms of threat, is like, okay, something too close to me can touch me at any moment and I won't have time to react, right? And so I need to put some distance between this. I need to be able to see you and what you're doing, or see it and what it's doing, and be able to protect myself in case. If something is too close, I don't have any choice but to either freeze or try to fight, depending on what the threat is, right? And so here we are at this Ten of Wands moment, and this thing where the threat is so close to you. This is not a threat that you can pull out your gun and shoot. This is not a threat that you can protest. This is not a threat that you can push back and yell about and be entitled. This is not that kind of threat. This is the kind of threat where it's so close. The only thing you can do is hunker down and hunch down. The only thing you could do is hide, stay in your house, keep your distance from people, because the threat is ever present. You never know where it's going to come from. But here in the Three of Pentacles, right, we have this idea of resourcefulness, of working with what we have, of this sober assessment of the tools available to us and how we can use them in this moment of weariness. I talk about the survival pod in terms of survival being is meant to be a shared burden, right? It's meant to be a shared burden, not an individual obligation. What are the ways in which society tries to brainwash us into believing that our survival is meant to be an individual obligation? One of the primary ways now is by saying that, oh no, these workers do not deserve to be paid $15 an hour plus. They should just go and get another job. They should have went to college. It's not my fault they were poor. Survival is meant to be a shared burden. The problem is not the wages paid to the McDonald's cashier. The problem is hoarding. The problem is somebody else hoarding and not paying their fair share. And so we talk about survival as this individual obligation only for poor people. Survival is only an individual obligation for poor people. I want to tell you who does this Three of Pentacles really, really, really well. Rich white people. Rich white people do this Three of Pentacles really well. They didn't believe or buy, they don't buy that shit. They don't believe that survival is an individual burden. They don't believe that an individual is supposed to be responsible. How do I know? Because they are able to get together and decide what our tax policy is going to be to benefit them. They take their shared identity of whiteness, of maleness, the ways that they're, somebody just told me that my volume is low on YouTube. I'm gonna turn it. Thanks, Darren. So only us poor folks have believed the lie that survival is meant to be an individual obligation. Rich white folk, or whatever the class of oppressors is where you are from, men, different castes, right? Those are the only people who don't buy this shit. They are able to gather their resources together. They are able to share their wealth. Look at Beyonce sending her clothes to rich people. You see what rich people do? Beyonce sent her clothes to all of her rich friends so that she can convince us poors to buy them. That's what rich people do. Rich people don't buy anything. They get everything for free. And so they hoard and hoard and hoard and share and pass. But we must learn that survival is not meant to be an individual burden, an individual obligation. It's meant to be shared. What do you have? It's not money, it's hey. You have time. Time. Saturn is in Capricorn still, and we're still building up to this massive Capricorn tsunami. I heard someone say a mortality tsunami. Yes, that's what this is. And Jupiter's there, and as we get closer to January and February, there are going to be more planets there. And what Capricorn, what Saturn is teaching us at this moment is that there, and shout out to Astrovisions, Darren Brown, for reminding me and beating this drum so loudly, that Capricorn talks to us about resources that have inherent value. Money has no inherent value, it has consensual value. Currency has consensual value, not inherent value. Inherent value is arable land. Inherent value is air. Inherent value is water. Inherent value is, because those things are going to run out. Rich people print more money all the time. They find something else they create new ways to store their consensual wealth all the time. But nobody gets, well, yes, you do. If you're white, you do, right? You like Donald Trump, you get access to the best hospitals and doctors and drugs that money can buy. But time, your skills, your empathy, the roof over your head, food, these are things that have inherent value. And in the Three of Pentacles, we are talking about coming together and sharing the burden. We're going to be tired. We're going to be weary. This is a marathon. Back in March, y'all thought we were going to have a regular summer. Nope. I told y'all back in March that we were going to be dealing with at least, right? And so with that in mind, right, how are you soberly assessing your skills and resources available to you in order to share the burden of obligation, the burden of survival? Who are you sharing your burden of survival with? Who's in your survival pod? We're going to get weary, but you're going to get even more weary alone. You're going to get even more weary. I mean, this is our collective antidote at this moment. that individualism is killing us, it's murdering us. Next, we have the Three of Wands. Okay? The Three of Wands, this is about intent. This is about setting out and waiting and watching. This is about the ways that we wait and watch for what we've already invested in to bring to fruition. There's a similarity between the Three of Wands and the Seven of Pentacles. Both of those cards have some connotations with waiting. Seven of Pentacles is kind of waiting time-wise in terms of the material investments that we've made. Right? Like the time we talked about in the Three of Pentacles. But the Three of Wands, when we talk about intention, we're talking about something inside of us, an idea, an inclination, something that moves us to act. And the action that we take is just the way that we translate our intention, right? So if I have the intention to be free, how am I going to do that? Neoliberal capitalism, black capitalism, reform, or defund and abolish. That whatever action I take is my way of translating what my intention is into something that's going to impact change. And so the Three of Wands talks about the actual intention and kind of waiting to see if the intention that we set has created the outcome that we wanted it to. I hear Spirit saying that this is a long game and that patience is required and that it's okay to tap out. It's okay to say, you know what? I don't have it in me today or this. But the only way we're going to make space for each other to tap out and to make it through this marathon is if we're sharing the burden of survival. If you have some extra, are you sharing? Are you passing it on? I read a tweet that said, and I'm paraphrasing here, about donating to charities and big organizations when your neighbor is food insecure. Your literal next door neighbor is in danger of losing their shelter. Even the philanthropic industrial complex is a way that wealthy people have come together to share their burden of survival. Who are you coming together with? Who are you sharing the burden of survival with? Or are you allowing internalized doctrines of individualism and bootstraps to cause you to shame your neighbor who is in need? To cause you to feel shame for asking for help? To cause you to hold tight to your purse when your neighbor is in need? How did you become so callous? How did you become so impervious to the suffering of someone who is right in your face? You want to feed children in India when your neighbor hasn't had fresh groceries in 2 weeks. But you don't even know your neighbor. You don't even know your neighbor. Who will come to your aid in your weariness and suffering? The white power structure, the capitalist wealth structure, has made it clear that they are not coming to help. What are you gonna do? Sit and whine? Yeah, I'm gonna tweet about it. I'm gonna call it out. Absolutely. I'm gonna sit and whine and I'm gonna yell and I'm gonna throw tantrums. But also, I'm gonna make an extra plate for a friend and take it and drop off. When I get some extra cash, I'm gonna pass it on to my friend who needs some help. Right? when I see the initiative to build trans housing in New Orleans, I'm going to amplify and I'm going to drop a couple dollars in. Feel me? Don't let those things pass by your eyeballs in judgment. You care what a person is going to do with your $5 when you pay thousands of dollars in taxes each year, only to be told that there is not enough money for you to stay home during this pandemic, only to be told that there is no relief to keep your roof over your head, and you're worried about what somebody's going to do with $5? Really? Decolonize your survival instinct. The threat is not your neighbor. Hanged man. Hanged man. Hanged man. I feel like I already spoke about this card. You know, what do you do after you've done all you can? That's my word for the hanged man. You just stand and endure, right? Listen, gospel music be having a word. Has a prescription for all of our moments. You don't have to believe in Jesus to hear the message. That there comes a moment where the weariness and the burdens is so heavy, you can't take another step. You can't take another breath. You don't have any more fight in you. You don't even have the energy to throw a tantrum. You don't care why. You just want to make it through to the other side. Do you want to make it through to the other side? Some of us will not. These are the harsh realities that Saturn is mushing up against our face. That death is the only way that you're going to get out of here. And we have a choice. Survival or capitalism. Which one do you want? Do you want to hoard and wait for your turn to oppress others, which may never come? You think you're going to be a billionaire, don't you? You think that you're going to have your turn oppressing. And when you get there, you won't oppress. But the only way that you can become a billionaire is on the shoulders and backs of someone else's suffering. So throw that shit away. Who are you sharing the burden of survival with now? You want to create your doctrine, your political mindset around some future that is never going to come, because the way that the system is structured is to make sure you never get there. And yet, who are you sharing the burden of survivalness? We weary. Son is tired. I'm tired. I lay up in my bed sad and angry that my child is being forced to grow up so quickly. Being forced to spend these precious years of his youth in isolation, hiding from a virus. Do you know what the blood of the Lamb is over your door? It's that sharing the burden of survival. That's what the blood of the Lamb is over your door. Sharing the burden of survival. We got a nice little glimpse of it at the beginning, right? People were turning their factories into hand sanitizer factories, repurposing their machinery to make masks, ventilators. How quickly did the capitalist structure go back to oppressing like it normally is? They don't want to cannibalize themselves by helping too much. Same goes for the wealthy and the upper echelons of power here in America. They'll give you enough to keep themselves in a position. The antidote for this moment, I've said so many times, is sharing the burden of survival. Leaving things up to the individual. That I don't care if my negligence and recklessness harms you. I'm going to do me and what I want to do. Is that what you're going to conform to? Realize the limits of conforming to the norms of race, gender, class, and sexual identity. Realize the limits of conforming to a lack of empathy. Realize the limits of conforming to recklessness. Realize the limits of conforming to a system that wants to kill you. Identity is a belief system and it's being weaponized by white people. But this ain't for them. This is for us. Us. We've been doing it and we let them talk us out of it. We've been living in intergenerational homes. We've been raising our children in community. The audio is still going in and out, y'all. I tried to turn it up. This is as loud as it can go on YouTube. Sorry, y'all. This is for us. We've been playing this game. We've been doing this. We've been sharing the burden of survival. And generation after generation after generation has decided that they want to conform. We want our turn to get on the boat. Thinking, maybe I could just catch a few before it goes down, you know what I'm saying? And then that way, going down with that hoe. You know it. The ship is going down. It's sinking right now. Who are you sharing the burden of survival with? That's all I got for y'all today. I'm going to take some questions. I'm going to turn back on the raised hand here on Clubhouse. And if you have a question on YouTube, on Instagram, please put it in the question box. If you have a question on YouTube, you can type it in the chat. If you have a question on Instagram, question box only. I'm not reading questions that come up the chat stream because they go too fast. Hey, Chastity, a natural beaut. Shout out for your shea butter, your butters, because they're the bomb. Sunny butter is the bomb. You're welcome. Thank you. Welcome. What's your question? Ooh, that is a really, really great question and a really difficult question. For those of you who can't hear on Instagram, Chastity asks, what is the boundary for sharing in terms of people who are codependent of people who may not be um as yes, here's winter. Oh shoot. I you just I made it. Okay. Yeah, so Chastity was asking about boundaries. Let me see if I can find this article because this article that I tweeted talked a lot about that. And if you don't follow Shrink Thinks on Twitter, that's somebody that you definitely want to follow. Um, yep, her name is Martha. Let me see. Oh, Shrink Thinks. Um, the article is on my Twitter page, but it says, "Where is the dividing line between and the world?" And so one of the things that I think is so important when it comes to like Scorpio and Taurus that and I can understand too the codependency that might come with sidereal Taurus because your survival has been dependent upon being so keyed into other people's actions to you and making your identity something that keeps you safe, right? Making your appearance and your identity something that elicits whatever necessary response. And so what Scorpio really does for us in this moment back into our body, right? That boundaries actually are not something intellectual in your mind that you think about where they are. That boundaries are physiological, that your body alerts you when someone is too close, someone is harming you. And learning to listen to trust your body is really a huge part of this work. So many of us get talked out of our feelings, and feelings you feel in your body. The name that we give them is intellectual. Nonsense about how we judge right? So remember when I was talking about anger or rage, right? That actually, you know, embodying boundaries is harmful for some people. And so when we're decolonizing the survival instinct, this is exactly what I'm talking about. That your body is colonized. The way that you actually experience, feel your own feelings and the judgments that you make, and the subsequent feelings that you have in response to that are colonized. So this stripping down, back down to the core, stripping back down, something that you were born with. We're born with this complex system, dangerous. So I don't really think it's beneficial to have like a one size fits all, clear way, because that's really stripping you of the work of developing the discernment and learning to listen to your body. Your body says, no. Body says, no, this is right. You have to be in the moment. I hope that was helpful, Chastity. You are very welcome. All right, we've got some questions here on Instagram. All right. ARC says, what about those of us in isolated places where we have no computer? People are wary of building the community right now. This is what the internet is for, right? This is what the internet is for. The internet, social media is for building this sense of connectivity. At the very beginning of this pandemic, Spring Thinks, and she's posting several of them now, but she posted or facilitated for healers, mental health professionals, because she was prescient in realizing that those of us in the professions, in the health profession, were going to be bogged down. And so it became a safe space for us there and get some support that we need to be rebuilding those. Even if it's not people that you know personally. One of the things that has emerged during this time is mutual aid. This is the very definition of sharing the burden, right? Mutual aid, how we come together and pool our resources and share them for the benefit of those in our community. So it doesn't always have to be someone that you know personally, because sometimes you know personally are fucking shit up and they out here with no mask and trying to come to your house and think like hell no, right? And so family for me is those who actually share and take serious the burden of survival with you, not people that you're blood related to. Because at these very moments, especially for people with Moon and Scorpio, y'all already know Moon and Sidereal Scorpio exist. It's a consequence of knowing that the very people who you share blood with are the same people that you need to protect yourself from. Right? I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. And I'm still accepting questions on Clubhouse, so raise your hand. Raise your hand. Shy City Champion says, what does sharing look like when it comes from your talents and skills to help facilitate this transition? That's something that's really personal. There's this Venn diagram that goes around that talks about like this sweet spot, something that you can be paid for, of something that fulfillment, and like you want to get that sweet spot, but that's not always going to happen. I think that there's a fine line between offering what you have and listening for what, and I think that that's something that we all need really work very hard at cultivating, hearing and space for the needs of others, because this is what is going to heal our own wounds of. I've said this before, but I'm going to repeat it again, that there is no way that we are going to be able to hold accountable people in positions of power from municipalities all the way up to federal if we are unwilling to acknowledge our needs. And sometimes it's easier to begin by paying attention and listening and making space for other people and not judging them and not trying to negotiate with that and not trying to say, well, you don't need that. You're just being, ah. Don't do it. Don't do it. Decolonizing the survival instinct, not seeing somebody else's need as a threat to your own survival and well-being. All right? I'm going to get a couple more on Instagram, and then I'll come back uh, Clubhouse here. White Autonomic says for Scorpio rising, people pay particular attention to what house Mars is in. Also, if you have the 2020 Sidereal Astrology Guide, you can go to the table. I don't know. Oh, here it is. If you have the 2020 Sidereal Astrology Guide, you can go to this table at the front that says 2020 Big Picture My Birth Chart. You come to this part that says Taurus, it's our X and eclipses. You're going to put the number of the house that sign is in birth chart. So because I'm Sagittarius rising, Taurus is my 6th house. So I just put in this box the 6th house significant from the houses table here. Same for Scorpio and same for Pisces, where Mars is. This particular eclipse is actually ruled by Venus in Libra. So in terms of where in this guide you can find that, the questions for November in are about Libra. And then, of course, you can go to the fill in the blanks in the back for the month of November. And you read Venus in Libra, the fill in the blank here is establishing consensus in relationships. Yes, so that's where you can find that. I'll be back to Instagram here. Jasmine, what's up, girl? Hey, Jazz.